Hello, welcome. It's been quite a while since the last manga wrap-up where I discussed and reviewed the different manga I've read in whatever month. It's basically been, the entirety or the majority of quarantine since then, so these are all the manga that I've enjoyed or not enjoyed, or just the manga I feel like talking about that I read during quarantine. The first manga I read, My Home Hero, was actually one of my favorites that I read. I won't go into all the details of the plot since I already did that in the TBR, but My Home Hero is basically about a father who kind of becomes a criminal for the sake of protecting his daughter. He kills her abusive gangster boyfriend, and it was very Death Note-ish. You can really feel how the dad is just a dad. In the beginning of the story, you kind of get the impression that he's a loser, like he doesn't stand up for himself. When other people rob him, he just kind of takes it. But this plot goes places, alright? It really does. I care for the gangsters almost as much as I care for the family, the main characters. The daughter feels like a real person, the mom feels like a real person. This dad is just a guy, he's not a cold-hearted killer, because there are bad guys and there are good guys, and then sometimes the good guys are tricking and betraying the trust of the bad guys, and then it's like this morally gray thing, which again draws the Death Note comparison. I'm not saying they're equal as if they're both masterpieces, but My Home Hero I wish was talked about more. Another one I read during that same month, the couple of weeks that the Readathon went on, is Paradise Kiss. And this one is pretty far from the last one I just talked about. It revolves a lot around fashion, because the main character is kind of like kidnapped by some students in a fashion school. It kind of follows her journey from totally hating them to becoming like a very well-renowned, successful model along with them, with the clothes that they're designing, and her becoming this new person. They actually had a lot of trouble getting through it, and that's because I really dislike the main character a lot. So because the protagonist of Paradise Kiss always has this inner monologue going that we can read through, thought bubbles of, as soon as we meet her, like this is our first impression of her, of, oh, they look like this, they're weird, why does he act like that, who's she? And I feel like it's almost supposed to be like a filter between the audience and the protagonist, where someone does something outlandish and then she's like, whoa, what was that? And the audience is supposed to go, haha, I'm thinking that too, but I wasn't thinking any of this. I like those characters and I want to get to know more about them. The beginning of Paradise Kiss was actually really slow to get through. The manga itself is very short, and I'm invested in the fashion part of it. I'm invested in knowing more about these characters. Yes, they're unique. Yes, they stand out. You don't have to tell me that all the time and tell me in a much ruder way than I'm thinking myself. Because yes, someone having like a paperclip in their mouth is a bit weird. So you can point out, why does he have a paperclip in his mouth? Like, that's something that could be a joke, but then to attack someone's like identity or entire personality in some very rude words that she keeps saying again, it's like, I didn't like her from the get-go. And this had a lot of like shoujo-ish things, like very specific to old shoujo. I like shoujo. I don't read it as much as a lot of other genres, but I do like it. But I want to see their interactions instead of it always trying to be a punchline making fun of these other characters. I don't know. So it was hard for me to get into. I kind of feel meh about it still. Kids on the Slope. I read the manga because previously I've only ever seen the anime adaptation. How many times have I talked about Kids on the Slope on this channel? How many times? I'm pretty sure almost every opportunity I got. The manga, I enjoyed a lot. I would own it, I would buy it for sure, just because I love the story in general, but I prefer the anime medium in this case because I can hear the music, I can hear the wonderful soundtrack. However, the manga is very good on its own. The art is beautiful to look at. The story, of course, carries through and shines just as much. Yeah, if you want me to talk about Kids on the Slope more, just watch any of my other videos. Trail of Blood was my favorite manga that I read for the readathon, and I'm so glad I discovered it, still reading it. still on the edge of my seat. The beginning of Trail of Blood really sets things up, okay? Because the plot is about, it follows the son, this young boy, and he's kind of like a mama's boy, you know, and other people make fun of him for that. He's always looked up to his mother. His mother is very soft, very kind all the time, but then one day they go on this family trip and she does something so unexpected that it shatters his whole world. She pushes his cousin off a cliff. Not by accident, but in cold blood, intending to kill him. I thought it would happen right away in the story, but there were actually quite a few chapters before this inciting event happened, where it's establishing who he is as a person, the protagonist. It's establishing how their home life is, and you start to think, oh wow, they're so sweet, you know, she really cares for him, he really cares for her, he's so wholesome. It makes us connect to the young boy. This whole story really dives into the damage a toxic parent can do to a young, impressionable son. This whole twisted idea of love is cover up and lie when I murder someone, or don't interact with other people, you're mine. You know? It's like she starts to reveal herself, she starts to peel things back, and she becomes the monster of this story. And the art, they look like real people. They're photos. If you've read anything by this artist, he captures the slightest emotion in the face, in the eyes. It's amazing, really. It amplifies the story, and it makes it like an experience kind of unlike any other manga I've read in a long time, where I'm just straight up watching real people talk to each other. I'm watching a young boy be scared of his mom, or I'm watching a young boy reject himself and reject his like schoolboy crush of another girl in order to be accepted by his mother because she's emotionally abusing him. Like, a lot of this is like so sick, and like it's supposed to be disturbing and like, oh my goodness, you know? Go read it if you want like the purest human psychological horror that there is, where you just feel straight terror of another human being, that those feelings that you feel in your real life, where you feel, oh, this person is danger, get away from them, or I'm in a toxic relationship with this person but I can't get out of it because I've been in it my whole life. Those kinds of feelings, they're in this manga, and I can barely talk about the plot because I only talk about how it makes me feel and the horror that it brings, and it's now one of my favorite horror series. The final manga I read for the readathon that I want to discuss is Candy and Cigarettes. Candy and Cigarettes is a hidden gem. First of all, the art style. I know I'm referencing the art style so much, but it's a big part of what makes a comic book or a manga enjoyable to me. Is very unique and cool to look at. The story is about an old man, you know, this grandpa. He gets desperate and he signs up, after looking for other jobs, he signs up with this very shady organization that actually gets these trained gunmen to assassinate people. They assassinate the kind of people that have done these unforgivable deeds, like politicians that are corrupt or stuff like that. And he gets paired with an 11-year-old girl. The whole story is about how they're partners. This old grandpa and this little elementary school aged girl who are both skilled with the gun, and they're both hired assassins. One of them refuses to kill, the other one is way too comfortable with killing. It's so good, it's so unique, it's so awesome to watch them bonding because there's this wholesome energy, but then they go on these missions and they kill people, and they discuss what makes a person evil. Am I comfortable with killing this person just because I can? It's similar to My Home Hero, where it puts these ordinary people, or at least this ordinary guy, in situations where he has to question his morality, and there's also lots of action spy stuff going on. Now we are moving on to manga I have finished during quarantine, whether they be long or short, whatever. I want to briefly discuss them. And I didn't read them for any specific readathon, I just read them in my own time. Kuro, or Black, is this unique but painfully short horror story of a young girl who lives alone in a mansion with this very mysterious, shady entity. I only found out about it through like searching genres and looking through recommendations, and it's like at the bottom where nobody's really reviewed it that much, and it was also very hard to find to read, by the way, so good luck. It's this dark fantasy mystery thing that unravels itself in front of you as you read it, and I'm not going to talk about the plot so much. It's a lot like School Live, if you know that anime, where it follows a cute, innocent protagonist in a heartless world, and you only learn the details of this heartless world either through her oblivious perspective or from the outside of side characters looking into her naivety. The world is fascinating. I wish there was more of Kuro to read. It was very atmospheric. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed that. The next series I finished during quarantine is The Promised Neverland. Now that the second season of the anime adaptation is coming, I'm actually really excited to relive the story, relive the suffering, you know. I'm not going to say it decreased in quality, but from where it started, the area that season 1 covered, to where it ended, were so far apart and felt like totally different stories, you know? Like, obviously, the first season is totally different. That's the point. They start out in this small bubble, and they go out into the world and discover what's going on, what happened. It ended too soon. Those are my thoughts. The ending of The Promised Neverland felt so rushed and, oh, this is happening, oh no, what? It felt like it was trying to close itself, close. All these things that had been building up, like, just like that. This happens so much with manga I love, that the ending feels rushed and out of nowhere. In a lot of ways, it was satisfying, and in some ways, the ending made sense. But in other ways, it felt like so far from what I had come to expect from the first half of the story, where it's like this game of cat and mouse, all these strategies, in the last, 20, 30 chapters, in the last few volumes, it felt like less like they were strategizing and more like they were pulling things out of nowhere. And the cast of characters had gotten so large from the previous arcs that it just felt so chaotic. By the final chapter, I felt glad that things had happened the way they did, and I felt glad that I had experienced it over the last year and a half, whatever. So I don't regret reading it, and I don't think it's necessarily a terrible ending. I just think it really could have done better. I think maybe the author was rushed, or just did the thing where they start plot elements and then don't know where it's going, so they just make stuff up. Creature is apocalyptic horror. Think Junji Ito, but then on acid. Body horror, human horror, where humans are doing all these disgusting things, and it's like despair, the element of despair with these larger creatures and entities that they don't understand, don't know how to fight. It's like that feeling, and then everything changes. I said I would talk about Creature more, and I kind of already said the majority of what needs to be said last time I discussed Creature, but now I'm going to talk about the plot more. Whereas these normal group of teenagers trying to survive, and it's super grotesque, super disgusting. It goes out of its way to kill off certain characters in this way or that, and a lot of the times the characters feel bland because they're like vehicles of horror. You know what I mean? Is that the right way to say it? It's just like Junji Ito, where the characters aren't exactly the point. They're supposed to be normal, bland pieces of cardboard. The monsters are the star of the show. The monsters are there to scare you, terrify you, make you throw up, make you lose sleep. Creature started that way, and that's how I expected it to go. I was just there for the very well-drawn, detailed horror, for the moments, and then it became something else, because this story has like two halves. The only reason I finished the story is because it took a turn. It went from this basic apocalypse, let's survive, let's go here, let's save this person, oh no, you're dead, kind of situation, to, okay, spoilers now. It skips ahead generations, okay? Like generations. It shows how the world has changed because of these creatures. of these alien things, and it shows how humanity has blended with the creatures and also has fought with them. So we follow these whole different characters. It's the kind of amazing but also terrible that you can't look away from. One chapter, it's like one of the best horror action chapters I've read that year, and then the next chapter, it's like this person turns into this absolute monster, and then they just start killing people. But then they have this really melodramatic scene where they're like, oh, you're my brother, and it's like, okay, you're just trying to get a reaction out of me now. I feel like I'm not making sense, but it's, again, it's a dumpster fire that I cannot look away from, because it gives me those moments of, wow, I'm so lucky to be reading this, but also, that's disgusting, why do I have to look at that? So Creature was one of the most polarizing reading experiences of this year, and I want to read it again, kind of, once the second half thing started and they skipped generations and it became this totally different sci-fi Attack on Titan-esque kind of thing, then I just couldn't read it fast enough. And then the ending was trash. The ending was absolute garbage, but that's okay. I'll read it again. If my description sounds appealing to you at all and you have, you know, a tolerance for the kind of horrors that you will witness, I would recommend Creature. The final and most recent series I finished is, like the rough English translation is, Mr. Paperbag is in love, and the best way I can describe it is these two idiot college students, they're just a couple of love-struck dum-dums, and they're so wholesome and adorable. This series is absolutely diabetes-inducing. I will not discuss the plot because the series is so short. Now that it's actually done, you could just finish it in a couple of days, honestly. If you want some wholesome fluff to brighten your day, to make you go, oh my god, you know, like a little middle school girl, this is the series for you. I'm going to be rereading this. It's absolutely adorable, and it brings me so much joy. So yeah, those are all the manga, well, most of them, the ones I wanted to talk about that I read during quarantine. I'm currently reading Spy Family, rereading My Hero Academia, and also reading Chainsaw Man, and I may discuss those in future manga wrap-up videos. I'll see you next week or next year or whatever time this video comes out. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.